First Rails lab. This is the lab that we will create a new user interface for a Rails 4 application, okay? So the idea is simply to create a new Rails application, and we will add some basic content and functionality to it just to make sure that the application is working okay. But the main objective is to get a common look and feel using HTML and CSS to make all of our pages look similar, okay? So that will be maybe to have a consistent header, a consistent footer, and a consistent layout for the content of our web application, okay? So the first thing we'll need to do is to launch up our Rails environment, okay? So for the example I'm going to use the Ubuntu image that we distributed, okay? So I'm actually going to do this through VirtualBox. So obviously the example here I'm on a Mac, but it shouldn't matter which platform you're on, you can just basically use VirtualBox to launch your Ubuntu image, okay? So the image name that I have for my one is NCI Ubuntu 2014. So I'm just going to click on it and click Start. Now this can, depending on how quick your machine is, this can take anything from a couple of 20-30 seconds up to a couple of minutes, okay? So this has booted up our Ubuntu distro and it's landed us in on the login screen. So the username is NCI and the password is just password all lowercase. So it's PASSWORD. Hit enter. And that should log us in, okay? So this has landed us in on our basic Ubuntu desktop, okay? So everything that we're going to do to create a Rails application for this example, we're going to use the terminal window and we're going to use gedit as the editor, okay? So I'm going to click on the home button here so you can just see it up at the top left. That will allow us to search for a particular application. So that we're after the terminal application. I can see it listed already, but I just typed TERM and it's a simple terminal window. It's highlighted here, okay? So click the terminal window and it's just going to create a normal terminal window for us, okay? So obviously we want to operate some description of a directory structure where we're going to actually store our applications. So it's very important to put something like this in place. So if you just click on the home folder on the left hand side here, this will allow us to visually view the hierarchical structure of the file system in Ubuntu. So if you click on Documents, that's our Documents folder, and in here you can see there's a folder called Apps, and this should be on every distributed image inside VirtualBox. So if you're using VirtualBox, the Apps folder should be there. If not, create one, okay? So if you just double click on Apps, we've got nothing in here yet, which is absolutely fine. So what I want to do is when I create the Rails application, I want it to reside inside the Apps folder, okay? So to do this, inside the terminal window, I need to navigate to the Apps folder. So you can just see here on the left-hand side, I'm going to click the terminal window again, and it brings us back into the terminal window. So I'm just going to see where we are with the pwd command, and it's saying we're in /home/NCI, okay? So if we do an ls here, it should show us or list all of the files and the folders in this directory. So obviously we've seen that our apps folder is in the documents folder, so I'm going to do cd for change directory to documents, and that moves us into documents. I'm just going to do ls again to see what's in here. I can see that the apps folder is listed. I'm going to go cd apps, hit enter, and if I do the command again to see where we are, it'll be /home/NCI/documents/apps, okay? So I'm now in the apps folder. So from within here, I'm going to create my new Rails application. So the command for this, I'm basically following, I have a printout of the create a new user interface for a Rails 4 application lab here in front of me, and I'm basically just going to follow all of the steps iteratively, one by one, until we've solved our problem, okay? So step 1 asks us to create a new Rails application. So the command for this is Rails new, and we're going to call the application layout example. So Rails new layout example, okay? So when you hit enter, this is going to create a folder, a layout example folder in our apps folder that's going to contain all of the files and folders needed to run our Rails 4 application, okay? So when you actually run the command for Rails new layout example, it's actually going to create that Rails folder for us, and it's going to pull in any external dependencies that is required. So usually might take roughly around a minute for this to complete, okay? Usually running the Rails new command runs quicker on a Ubuntu or a Unix or a Linux environment than it would on a Windows environment. So if you're on a Windows machine and it kind of pauses that bundle install, just be patient and let it complete, okay? So that's it finished, okay? So our new Rails layout example has completed. So before I do anything in terminal, I'm just going to come back to our kind of file explorer and have a look in layout example. And you can see that it has automatically created our hierarchy for us. So we have our app, bin, config, our database, our lib, log, public, test, and temp folders, and we also have our gem files. So just out of preferences, I usually like to I might just arrange items by, yeah, so I'm happy enough with that, yeah. So what are we going to do next? So I'm going to, at the command line, so we've step 1 completed. The next thing we want to do is we're going to update the Rails application template, okay? So this is step 2. So we're going to go to our home folder, so click on places, and we're going to navigate into our home folder. So I'm just going to take it as if we were just in our documents. So double click apps, double click our layout example folder. So what we're trying to do is have a look at the application.html.erb file. Now, so where does that reside? So that's in app, views, and there's a folder in here called layouts. So you can see here there's a file called application.html.erb. It's kind of like holds the common template, the common look and feel for all the pages in our application. So we're going to open this with text editor. So we can just right click it and open it with text editor. Okay, so that jumps us into gedit. I'm just going to close the little terminal window here because we're not going to use them for this example, okay? So we can see here at the top we have our doc type HTML. We have our head, so we have our title, and it's given a layout example. I'm just going to separate that just to make it appear a little clear. You know, we have our style sheet definitions, JavaScript, all within head. That's absolutely fine. The most important thing we can see here is that inside the body tag we have our yield. And what this is kind of operates like a placeholder for any of the pages or any of the content that are on any of our pages in our Rails application. It's substituted here for yield. So anything that we define in here operates as a common template when it's generating pages to be served down to the end user, but the content of a page will be substituted here in yield. So this always has to be in our application.html.erb, okay? So the next step is step 3, and it's asking us to copy the images to the image folder. So there's a zip file on Moodle that contains I suppose, a HTML and CSS template. And we're going to use this kind of styling scheme to apply to our new Rails application, okay? So I'm just going to save any changes I've made. and I'm going to get the file. So basically the file resides on Moodle. So I'm going to open up Firefox inside our Ubuntu image, and I'm going to navigate to Moodle. So it's moodle.ncirl.ie. And basically just whatever your login credentials are. So obviously my page structure will look a little different than yours. So I just click on Web Application Frameworks, and obviously we're operating out of week 2, and that's going to be our, so you can see here the lab we're following is our create a new user interface for Rails 4 application, and we have our zip file here, which is our online bookstore. Okay, so click on this and click save. So basically this is going to save this into our Ubuntu file system, and we can use this then as part of our styling. So click on your home folder, click on downloads, and you can see there's one for online bookstore.zip. So obviously we need to extract the contents of the zip file before we can use it. So you can right click and just go extract here. And that will create for us an online bookstore folder. So if you double click on this, you can see there that we have our CSS, our images, and our JavaScript. There's one more file there called project.example.htm. If you right click this and open it in Firefox, you'll get a look at the, I suppose, the look of the styling of the page that we're going to use. So we're basically going to create an online bookstore page. So it has the header, some links, a right-hand menu, and a footer. Okay, so this is what we're actually going to use as our template. I'm just going to close him off, and I'm going to go straight back to our lab. So the lab is asking us to copy the books folder and the site folder to the images folder in our application. So very quickly, I'm going to jump back into our File Explorer. So this is for the online bookstore folder that we've downloaded from Moodle. So click on Images, and in here there's 2 folders, Books and Site. Highlight the 2 of them, copy them, Control C, and we're going to put them into our Images folder in our application. So I'm going to go back to Home, I'm going to go Documents, Apps, Layout Example. Now, the images in our Rails 4 application is in Apps, Assets, and Images. Okay, so there's nothing in Images here, so I'm going to paste my images in here. So right, okay, so they haven't copied. I'm just going to double back very quickly again. So Home, Downloads, Online Bookstore, Images. So just make sure I've got them again. Right click, copy, and I go back to Documents, Apps, Layout Example, then it's App, Assets, Images. I'm going to paste them in here. So, okay, paste. So my books and my site folder have been copied in. So I'm going to use the images that are within these folders to apply a common CSS theme across our application. So there are just some of the book images, and there are just our site images. So there's the header, there was the teacher that we'd seen in on there, there was the book that's included on the page, just the basics of it. Okay, so that was step 3. So step 4 is to add the CSS from the HTML page example to our Rails application. So basically we have 2 CSS files that were used to style that online bookstore page, and we're going to include those in our Rails application so that the CSS styling will be applied to the HTML markup that we put in our application.html.erb file. So the HTML example, which is our online bookstore from Moodle, uses 2 style sheets. So for our page to render correctly, these need to be added to our Rails application. So first we have to get our 2 CSS files. So we'll go back to our zip file. So back to our folder, back to home, downloads, online bookstore, and we go into our CSS. You can see here there's a file called siteexample.css and 2column.css. So I'm going to copy these two, and I'm going to go back to, so click home, documents, apps, layout example. So I'm going to put these into our CSS folder. So the CSS folder is in assets again, so it's app, assets, and style sheets. Okay, so there's already one here called application.css. So within this folder, I am just going to paste in my siteexample.css and my 2column.css. So the CSS must be updated to allow Rails to locate the images used in the template. So basically, for the previous example, we were operating out of a different directory structure, okay? So for our header images and the images that are used as part of that template, there are, I suppose, routes that have been defined in our files. So we're just going to edit each one and make sure that they're okay. So right click, and we're going to say open with text editor. I will just go down to it, just updating any of the links, okay? So for site example, there's nothing there. That's absolutely fine. I'll leave them. And I'll go back to my folder, and 2column I think has 3 or 4 entries that we'll need to edit, okay? So open with text editor. That one's commented out, we don't need it. Our div container has a background image, so we will need to update this, okay? So instead of /image, dot means move out one directory. It was in images, in site, and in there's a file called bg3.gif, okay? So for this to operate inside Rails for us, we will go /assets and /site /bg3.gif, and we basically just update all of our paths for this. And we're not specifying the images folder. Rails is just clever enough to route these for us, okay? There is another one. And that's them all. So make sure you save the file, Control S, and that's absolutely fine. So we're moving on to step 6, which is replace the body content of the existing application.html.erb with the following. So it's asking us to make some changes. So basically there's some HTML markup that's used to put structure on this given page, and the CSS will be applied against this markup, okay? So it's not asking us to type it out from scratch. If we go back to Firefox, and you can see on Moodle there's a link there for create a new user interface for Rails 4 application. Just click on that, and it's pointing to an external source. So it's http, it's rails.mccarthywebsites.com /lab1.php. I'm just going to go right click, open link I'll open a new tab, okay? So basically this looks the exact same as your lab document from Moodle. It's just that it's in HTML format, and it's just going to be easier to cut and paste some of the code stuff. So step 6 has asked us to cut and paste the following markup that we have here under step 6 into our Rails, or into our application.html.erb file. So copy whatever file, the content that's specified here. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so we can see what we're copying. So this is basically all of the markup that was specified in step 6. So it's right click, copy, and I'm going to put this into application.html.erb. So we looked at this file earlier on. So we said that we wanted to, it's already open, so I'll just close it. So I'll just close whatever's open, just so we'll get a better feeling for the hierarchical structure inside Rails. So go back to our folder, go back to layout example. So we're looking for app, views, layouts. You can see here, this is where application.html.erb resides. We're going to open this and make the changes, i.e. we'll paste in the code we've just copied instead of what's there. So right click, open with text editor. So this is the content that's here. So basically we're just going to copy, delete what's here. Control A selects everything. So I'm just going to paste in what we have, okay? So obviously it's pasted in for us. We've obviously lost our nice formatting, so if you want to just tidy it up, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to put a little bit of a structure on it just very quickly, just so we will get a feel for what we're doing, okay? List items. So if you're tidying up stuff, just be careful that you don't actually delete any of the tags or change the format of them, or the page mightn't render correctly, okay? So there's our menu. We can get the hierarchy or the nesting going later. So basically containers here for us. We have div content. You can see our yield tag is here. So all of our content is going into an ID, a div ID with an attribute and a value of content. So that's basically where we're going to put all of our page content. It goes within this tag, okay? So we've our first column. So basically these are just this is our right hand, the first column is our right hand menu. I'm just going to very quickly tidy it up. Okay. Now I can see very quickly that I have already made a mistake with this. So the lab had asked us to paste the content of what we copied from Moodle into the body of application.html.erb, not to replace the whole thing. So I'm just going to take one step backwards. I'm just going to copy what I have. And I'm just going to close the file without saving, okay? It's asking, I'm going to just say close without saving, so no harm done, okay? So I'm just going to repeat step 6. So I've copied the content, so I'm just going to go open with text editor. And it's what the code that I've actually copied from the website, I'm just going to paste in here into the body tag, okay? So Control V. Okay, so maybe I'll just delete what's there. And just paste this in, okay? So I'm just going to remove the doc type, it shouldn't be there. And that's absolutely fine, okay? So save that. And we will move on to step 7. So basically all we did was cut and paste the content that was shown in step 6 straight into the body of our application, okay? So next step is step 7, is asking us to create some site content. Basically we need to have something to display on our pages to know that our theme is actually working, okay? So it's asking us to run some Rails commands. Come back to our terminal window. Now I can see very quickly that we're not in the layout folder. So if you do pwd, it'll tell us that we're in home, NCI documents apps. We need to be in the Rails folder to run the commands. So we need to move into our layouts folder. So change directory cd layout example. And now we're in there. So we do pwd again, you'll see it's telling us we're in the layouts example folder. So we're going to run our Rails command. So Rails, so basically we're going to create a simple scaffold called user. So Rails generate scaffold users. Users is going to be what we're creating, and a user is going to have a username of type string, and it's going to have an email type string also. Hit enter. Just have a quick look at it. Maybe just have a quick look before, make sure you're happy with it, and then just hit enter. And Rails will automatically create our user model, our users controller, and the views that are associated with it. Now, if we want to create our database table, we run our rake db migrate command. So rake db migrate, hit enter. So our database tells us our database table has been created. That's brilliant. Now, if we want to run the server, the command is rails s, rails s or rails server. So rails s for short. Just hit enter. And you can see that it's fired up. Our WebBrick local web server has been fired up for us. So come back to Firefox. Where's Firefox? Come back to Firefox, open a new tab, and go to the URL http. And we can go for local is 127.0.0.1. And we're running it on port 3000. And we're going /users, USERS, and hit enter, okay? Now, this is showing us the template that we've added, so we can see it has our image up here in the top. We've our menu, our kind of right hand menu or right hand content over here on the right hand side, and inside this square area here, this is our div with an ID of content. It's displaying the user's index page. So let's click on new user. We create a new username, and we'll go for Jonathan. .mccarthy ncirl.ie and create user. So you can see our user has been successfully created, so our CRUD functionality is working for us. So if we just click back, you can see here it's listing users, and there's the user. So we have our show, edit, and destroy functionality. So just maybe click a few of these, add a few users, make sure you're happy with everything that's working, okay? So step 8 is asking us to generate 3 scaffolds for books, ebooks, and register, okay? So we can very quickly come back to our terminal window. To stop the server running, Control-C will stop it running, and you'll see we're back on our prompt windows just to enter some data. So if we wanted to create a scaffold for books, so Rails, generate, scaffold, we call it book, and we'd call it a name, string, maybe we'll give a book a category, category string. So it doesn't really matter. Obviously there's a wide variety of different parameters associated with a book. We're just demonstrating just the basics of running some basic scaffolds. So it's Rails, generate scaffold, book, name of type string, category of type string, hit enter. And that's run our command for us. So if we want to create the database table for books, it's rake space db : migrate. And he's been created for us. So we want to see, does this actually work? Let's run the server again. So it's Rails space S and hit enter. And you can see here the server is running. That's great. I'm going to go straight back to our to Firefox, and I'm going to, instead of users, I'm going to put in books, BOOKS. You can see here then our book scaffold is working. So you can see by the naming convention, if I create a scaffold called book, the URL for the list or the index page is /books. If it was user, it's /users. If I did one for register, it's /registers. If I create a student, it's /students. So it just takes a little while just to get the feel of the naming convention. So I'll create a new book, put in the Rails 4-way, good book, and category programming. Successfully created, click back, and there's our list all page for it, okay? So you can see the URL for books is /books, the users is /users, and so on. So You can see step 9 is saying update the application.html.erb file to add the links to the new pages. So obviously it's asking us to create 3 or 4 different scaffolds for books, ebooks and register. I've just done books. I'll let you try the other 2 and see how you get on with them, okay? So let's see, step 9, back into our example here. So we can literally copy our code, Control C, copies, or right click, copy, okay? So it's asking us to make a change to application.html.erb. So go back to your editor. Application.html.erb is already open, okay? So we have copied our div navbar. So this code that I'm highlighting here is what we're changing. So I'm just going to tab them in just so we'll see that this is what we're actually changing. Where the menu stays in place. So I'm just going to delete what was there and I'm going to paste our new code into the menu. So I'm just going to highlight them, tab them in, and you'll see here that that's what we're getting. I'm just going to tidy up. The message is displayed twice, so just tidy them up. So that's what we got. So /users is our home, /books is our books. If you create one for register, it will be /registers. So you can just fix him there from the naming convention, okay? And just save him. If you go back to your application and just refresh it, if you look there, home, the link is here first, /users. And you click on books, it's /books. So we're basically using our application.html.erb file to maintain a menu of the different pages or the different scaffolds or the different functionality we've included on our Rails application, okay? So step 10 has asked you to create a project with a different template. So maybe you might be able to try, go online, see can you get, a simple HTML template and see can you actually style it. Or if you don't want to get one from online, see can you change the template that we've actually added here today to say that, okay, well, we've got the books template working. Can I change it, modify it, customize it to look and feel as I want to? So obviously this will be relevant from the project perspective to make sure that you can have a nice looking UI or common look and feel across all your pages as part of your project as well. Okay, so if any questions, just contact Jonathan. Thank you guys. Cheers.